Thank you very much. I appreciate you taking the time. How are you?
Thank you, Chris. Thanks for the invite. I'm always up for new interviews, especially when it has to do with the Bob Katsionis project. Very, very proud of it. And thanks for having me on the show.
No problems at all. As I say, it's kind of my pleasure. So let's kind of start off with the question that I ask absolutely everybody at the start of the interviews. So how did you get into music? What do you remember about, when was your first kind of interaction with music, and what made you want to do it as a profession?
We're going way back now. When I was 13 years old, back in New York, Astoria, Queens, I was raised in the Greek Orthodox Church, and I love Byzantine music from a very young age, and it was embedded in me from a very young age because my mom took me to church just every Sunday, and I love the Byzantine chanting, and that's basically where I got my start, I guess you could say, listening to that kind of the vocals. It was just pure vocals, and that really got into me, into my heart, into my soul. So I started chanting. I started as a chanter, actually. That's when I realized that I have a pretty good, powerful voice. I was always into rock music because my older brother was a hippie in the 70s, and the room was filled with Jimi Hendrix posters, Led Zeppelin posters, Dio posters, and all sorts of paraphernalia of the 70s. And so I always had a root into classic 70s rock music during the time there in New York. So I saw that as a chanter, I had a good voice. I was able to sing. I was able to carry a tune. I was able to stay on note and on key, and bringing that into what I was listening to with my brother, vinyl records and whatnot in the house. As I was growing older, reaching 16, 17 years old, I started, using whatever I learned as a Byzantine chanter into screaming at the top of my lungs like Robert Plant, in every Zeppelin song. So I kind of fused those two together. That was my start. My brother, my hippie brother, started me off into my rock journey. Let's put it that way.
Very nice. Yeah, I actually watched some of the interviews that you have done already, and you've mentioned the Byzantine music and that you sang in the church choir in other interviews as well. So I was actually kind of wondering what you kind of learned from that Byzantine style of music that you have managed to transfer over into the world of metal.
Well, the most difficult part of singing, just trying to sing, is staying on key, staying on note. And Byzantine music is so precise and so articulate that it was as a young child, I was always amazed at how well everything was tuned, all the voices that I was hearing. It was very, very difficult at the beginning to try and not not kick off key. You gotta stay on key, especially when it's just voices around, or when it's a choir. One false note, one false voice, and everything blows over. It's all done. So what I took away from the Byzantine music, other than that soulful feeling that it has, is being articulate and precise on every note that you sing. That's how they teach you in Byzantine music. It's note for note, specifically and literally. It's note for note. You got to be on key every single note. So they teach you. It's tedious. It's very hard. It's very difficult. It takes patience. If you don't have the patience, you're gonna fall off key. And so that's what I took away from that, and I put it into metal music, which means you see back in the day, without before auto tuning and before all the AI and before all the computer crap, singers would fly off key all the time. You know what I'm saying? And back in the 80s, I was one of those. If anyone had anything to say about me, I was this guy always sings metal songs on key. So I'd like to say that I took away from the Byzantine music. It taught me how to stay on key no matter what, because it's very articulate, very, very, very difficult music.
Yeah. So as a teenager, teenagers are very, I guess, for lack of a better word, unfocused. So did you find it difficult to sing, as it's such a precise form of?
Absolutely, it was Chris. It was tedious, like I said, and being raised in a house with four other siblings, my parents, everybody screaming at the top of their lungs. It was very difficult to concentrate. Very difficult. I mean, I ended up like stealing my brother's car keys and going in and practicing, with a cassette player. Remember the cassette players with batteries and all that, with the big not batteries, and going into the car and trying to practice in whatever spaces I could find. I remember going into closets and locking myself into closets, trying to, keep away from all the noise happening in the house. Very difficult. And of course, as a teenager, like you said, adding on to, school and I would go to work with my father. Just trying every second I had free was always about trying to sing correctly, basically. I always knew I wanted to be a singer. I always knew that. And I always knew that I had to start from an early age to concentrate and try to be on key all the time. And like I said, that's what the Byzantine music taught me.
The reason we are talking today is because of your Vass Katsionis project, which you've released 2 albums with. Bob Katsionis being the other half of the Vass Katsionis, who you've worked with a number of occasions over the years, and who's not only a talented musician, he does mixing, engineering, producing, all those kinds of things as well. So I was wondering, have you managed to learn anything, or what have you learned from Bob from that side of things?
Yeah, well, it's definitely sitting down and music 101. It's a class. It's a master class sitting around and just watching Bob work. It's an honor, of course, because he's top notch. He's the best that we have to offer from here, from Greece, and I'm honored to be working with him and making albums with him. He's just, like I said, I found someone that's just as precise as I am, that's seeking perfection all the time, that's never satisfied with the outcome. I mean, we would have a finished product and we'd be bouncing back and forth saying, no, it's not ready. Yes, it's ready. No, it's not ready. Yes, it's ready. I mean, we would bounce that back and forth to each other because we were never satisfied, which it was like a mirror. It was like a mirror effect. I was him and he was me at many, many times during production. Like I said, he's always on top of things. He always has the state of the art machinery and instruments in the studio. He wants the musician or the vocalist to be as comfortable as possible. He's very professional, very professional. I mean, there's no joking around. When he hits that record button, it's work, 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 man. He has a great high work ethic. Just everything positive about this guy. I mean, you really can't find a better studio producer, musician, arranger, composer. You bring him a one-dimensional idea, and he's going to make it like 15-dimensional. I mean, it's not. It goes way beyond. You could never imagine that you brought him a seed, and the tree that sprouts out from his ideas and from his work. You'd never imagine that your seed could come up so plentiful.
High praise indeed. So what do you think Bob saw in you?
Well, Bob and I have been working for over 15 years together. He produced my band's second album, Terra Incognita, which was an power epic, heavy metal, classic metal band. And that's when we first started talking about working together. He produced, like I said, the second album. He produced the EP from that point on. We did all our video clips with him because he's a video producer also. I mean, he's from A to Z, whole thing, the whole nine that a band needs, just in one package. So that's when we started way back before 15 years. And I was just so happy with the results from the albums that I made with him and my band that when it was time to go solo, of course, the first person I talked to and called was Bob Katsionis.
Now, you're a person that wears your influences kind of clearly on your sleeve, but at the same time, I'm always interested in hearing kind of influences or music that you perhaps listen to that wouldn't be immediately obvious. And I noticed in one interview you mentioned you were listening to Sade on that particular day. Tell us, what do you listen to that people might be surprised by?
Well, absolutely. Yeah, well, to be quite honest, it's been a while since I heard anything remotely close to heavy metal, to be honest with you. When you start listening to that kind of music at like age 12 and 13 years old, and you progress after so many years, nobody's trying to invent the wheel anymore. So, it's kind of, it's tedious. It's kind of repetitive. So, of course, as a vocalist, as a musician, as a songwriter, you got to branch out. You can't stand still for too long. So I felt like I bled dry the whole rock, heavy metal influence for my ears. So I started branching out. I always had roots and branches in other styles of music because I grew up in a ghetto. I grew up in a ghetto in Queens, and I have Latin in me. I have R&B in me. I have hip hop in me. I was raised with all sorts of cultures around me. So of course, whether I liked it or not, whether I knew it or not, that was embedded in me at a very young age, very early age, going to friends' houses, whether they were Latin, whether they were Black, whether they were Asian, whether they were Indian, American Indian, Pakistanis. I mean, I grew up, like I said, in the ghetto. The whole building was filled, just ethical culture just blooming out of this building. And it was beautiful. It was just great. Of course, I didn't realize what I was getting from this back then, but I realized it now. And it has to do with my musical influences. So after I tapped out of the whole heavy metal rock thing, I started tapping into, like I said before, like Latin music, R&B, hip hop, Asian music, Egyptian style, from pieces like Turkey and from all sorts of stuff. I'm just, that has nothing to do with my voice, trying to sing like them or trying to bring that influence into my singing technique while I'm a heavy metal singer. It's just for me, for my soul, for things to blossom inside of me, and so that I don't feel like I'm standing still and listening to the same thing over and over again. That's why I ended up branching out. And like I said in other interviews, that particular day I was listening to Sade. Yesterday I was listening to Otis Redding. A couple of nights ago I was listening to Hall & Oates. A couple of nights ago before that, what was on the playlist? I went into this whole, like I said, Egyptian, Turkish, different instruments. Just things, psychedelic things, trying to open up my views, my mind's eye about what can influence me and keep my soul moving forward.
So yes, you have mentioned you grew up in the USA, America. You've also mentioned that you spent time playing on the Sunset Strip in the heyday of the 80s glam era. Have I got that correct?
We never actually made it to the Sunset Strip. A band from out east trying to go that far west was very, very difficult at the time. We had the whole package, of course. We had made a video, a VHS, VCR cassette of our performance at all the local clubs. We were ready. We had contacts with some minor labels out there. They were very interested because we had the whole spandex and makeup and hair, and we were totally, my band back then, we were totally into like the whole glam thing before I got into progressive metal. But we never actually made it out to the Sunset Strip. Never made it out there because, of course, first of all, we didn't have the funds. And second of all, we didn't have the official invite, let's say, from, the record labels that were, kind of checking us out and all. We were waiting for months and months and months, and the letter never came because, of course, it had to do with, letters back then. There were no emails, there were no cell phones. It was letters back and forth, and it never actually came. So we just stayed on the local scene. We would go up and down, we would play in Pittsburgh, and we would play in Virginia, and just, going up and down in Boston, but never made it out to the West Coast. It was a big dream that was never fulfilled.
Was there much of a glam scene on the East Coast back in the 80s?
Well, we got our asses kicked, that's for sure. No, because it was difficult. It was very difficult. Good thing Skid Row had come out at that time. So they brought in right? They brought in that rawness into the glam scene. You know, they had the makeup and the hairspray and all that spandex, but with a super attitude, with a super, I may be wearing lipstick and hairspray, but I can still kick your ass kind of an attitude. So that helped us, push along our cause, because we were aggressive also, but everybody saw what we looked like mostly. We weren't like Poison, that's for sure. We were more like a Guns N' Roses, like a cross between Skid Row and Guns N' Roses, lots of chains and shit like that. But never got to the Poison stage. We were never mistaken for women. That's for sure. Yeah, good thing a couple of those bands had come out back then, and they kind of gave us, a gateway. They kind of said, it's okay. We're here too, and we're super famous. You could try to do it too. But in New York and out in the East Coast, very difficult to push that forward. Very difficult. I remember one band in particular that we opened for, and they tried to help us, but they only got to about an album, I think, or a second. Spread Eagle. They were a really, really good, East Coast band. We played the circuit with them. They were like the whole Skid Row attitude thing. They got us into all that, but that was it. That's as far as we got. Them too. But we would always talk about, trying to not get our asses kicked by the thrashers back then and the punks and all that, about out CBGB scene and all that. Yeah. Difficult.
So I guess what were some of the good things and bad things about that time? What was more difficult those days? What's easier these days? Yeah.
Yeah, well, it has to do, I guess, with the sound that you're looking for, or that you want to put on your albums, put on your music. Back then everything was there was no computers, there was no AI. It was all what you heard was what you got. You know what I'm saying? It was just everything coming out of the instruments, basically. There were no buttons, there were no computers. It was I like that. That's the sound. I'm trying to get back to that now. I'm trying to actually get back to that sweet, soft, beautiful sound that like a Fender Stratocaster would pop out, just on its own from a pig nose amp, without plugging it into any kind of plugins, into any kind of AI, things like that. Well, that was the scene back then, early 70s, early 80s, that for me, that was the good thing that I miss nowadays. You know what I'm saying? Very difficult to capture that sound from back then today. Nowadays, very difficult. That for me was the highlight. You know what I'm saying? Just hearing the chords from actual guitars without pedals, without a bunch of pedals, without a whole bunch of computers jumping in and fucking up the sound and all that. Just raw. Like I said, raw music. What you see is what you get. What you hear is what you get. That was. I guess those are the positive points, music-wise, of course, right? And of course, the gathering of the band to write music, man. We would sit in a basement for hours on end. I remember we were stuck in the basement for 3 days, just pizzas and beer and writing a whole album. That's gone. That's gone. Email back and forth, the tracks, the MP3s, this and that. It's so faceless. The whole thing is so faceless. I mean, I've become a part of the monster. I've become part of the machine, of course, because that's the only way you move forward. But you asked me what the best parts of back then, what I miss. That's definitely that bonding of the bands, man. I mean, it's like, I'm in a band right now where we've never even gone out for a beer yet. You know what I'm saying? It's just like, back and forth, emails and messenger and tracks and MP3s, and just never even gotten together to have a fucking beer, man. And back then it was, getting stuck in a basement for 3 days straight with pizzas and beers, just, getting on each other's nerves, cranking out tunes and recording on little cassette players, the idea so we can go into the studio and record the album. That, is that magic is gone. Unfortunately, that magic is gone. What's better now, of course, is how much easier everything is, right? I mean, everything is at a touch of a button. You know what I'm saying? There's a song on Ethical Dilemma, the first Vass Katsionis album, which is about all that. It's the song Dream Screen. Everything is a dream screen in front of you. You can touch it, and it's yours. You can touch it, and you can do whatever your mind's desire. It's everything is just, I guess you could say, way too easy. The access is too much. Nothing exceeds like excess, they say. that to me is like the better part nowadays, I guess you could say. Things get done much quicker, much faster. Like I said, waiting on record labels for months, trying to get that letter, trying to get that confirmation. Now it's just an email away, boom, boom. It comes back and forth in a couple of days. It's done. So I guess time basically is much better these days with everything that has to do with music. But again, the magic is gone, man. Magic is gone.
Yes, we touched on Terra Incognita, which was the band that you were in prior to the current project that you're doing, Vass Katsionis. There were kind of two incarnations of that band, if I'm correct. And then,
Right.
You kind of finally pulled the plug on it for whatever reason.
Literally, I pulled the plug on the whole thing. Yeah.
I was wondering how difficult or easy was that decision to make, seeing as, you had kind of made a couple of albums. From what I understand, you got a little bit of notice with that band before, I guess, it kind of imploded.
That's exactly what happened, Chris. It imploded. When it was time to come out and start songwriting for the third album, the band imploded. Exactly what you said. Nobody was on the same page after touring for the second album, Fragments of a Ruined Mind, which went well. We did great out in Europe. We played Germany. We played Slovenia. We played Romania. We played Bulgaria. Of course, all the local shows here, all the big bands that were coming. We opened up for Gravedigger, Gus G. We opened up for Primal Fear. We did a great leg for that album. Everything was great going into the third album, and then it just imploded. When we came back from all that, we took like a 3-month hiatus after our last show for the Fragments of a Ruined Mind leg tour. We came back, took a break all summer long, came back in autumn, and we just sat in the studio and said, okay, well, who's got, the next step for the band? And everybody was like saying so many different things. Nobody was on the same page. And we couldn't get connected. Well, one guy was like, why don't we do a best of? Another guy was like, why don't we go back and do the first album? Another guy was like, you know what? I want to take a break. I don't want to write music anymore. I'm burnt out from the whole tour. I was like, we need to write the third album. I mean, the record label, is demanding the third album. Just a fucking mess, Chris. It was a mess, and nobody was budging. And because it was my band, I pulled the fucking plug, like you said. It imploded. I pulled the plug. Everyone went their separate ways. I turned to Bob, and he said, the contract that you have with the label has another album on it. You need a third album. And the brainstorm came about where I wanted to make the turn into more progressive metal music. That was another argument that I had with the imploding band. Nobody wanted to go prog. Everybody wanted to stay into that power heavy, classical heavy metal sound that we had. I wanted to veer off into more progressive songwriting. They wouldn't have it. So I turned to Bob and I said, this is what I want to do. How are we going to approach this so that I could be, I could honor my contract to come out with a third album? He said, why don't we just go solo? Why don't we just go solo? I mean, it was Bob's idea. I was like, why don't we can come out with the album under Terra Incognita? I'll be the only band member. You do all the instruments, Bob, of course, and we come out with an album without a band. He's like, you know what? That's not a good idea because you had such a great success with the album before. People are going to expect you coming out with a product to go around and play live and support your third album. So no go on something coming out under Terra Incognita. So that's when he said, you know what? Just go solo to be good on your contract, to make good on your contract, and for you to go forward. And this would be a great healing process. And he said it's just going to be a Billy Vass album, going prog. Billy Vass going prog. It was that simple. And I was like, holy shit, let's do it. To make a long story longer, Bob was so impressed with the outcome of the first album that we had that he was like, you know what, fuck this. My name's going on this too. He said, it's not gonna be a plain Billy Vass album. This is gonna be a Vass Katsionis album. I was like, better for me. Your name next to mine is 1,000 steps up for me. So it all kind of fell into place, Chris.
I was listening to the Vass Katsionis albums, and I noticed that the music does get quite heavy. There's still a big focus on melody, which I think makes it more accessible. Is that kind of intentional? Can you talk a little bit about your songwriting process when it comes to lyrics and melody?
Well, when we sat down and we cemented the fact that we're going to come out with a Vass Katsionis album, we started saying, okay, let's see, what direction we want to go into. Of course, we want to go prog. We want to step away, many steps away from the whole Terra Incognita thing. Let's make it that, there's so many singers that come out with their solo project, and it sounds exactly like what they were doing with their band. If you hear any James LaBrie album, it sounds like a Dream Theater album with different production. It's the same thing. You know what I'm saying? It's like you're hearing the same exact thing. So we didn't want to fall into that trap. And I told him that. I said, I don't want to be another James LaBrie. I want my solo album to have nothing to do with what I was doing before. And he said, no, that's not a problem. We're going to go prog. Terra was never prog. So, we took care of that. And I said, so he goes, for the first album, we wanted to come out with, in quotes, we said, we're going to come out with the second part of Fates Warning's Parallels album, the second part. What they never wrote for the second part of that album, that's what we're going to say. That was our focus, to come out with an album that would be the continuation of Fates Warning's Parallels album, which that was our focal point right there. Let's come out with songs that would be the answer to their songs from that album. That's how much we wanted to prog out and get as close to Fates Warning as possible. If you're familiar with Fates Warning music, Ray Alder, his melodies are just, they're uncanny. He's so focused on his melodies. That's what made me try to focus as much as I can on getting the best melodies out of the songwriting that we were doing. Very important, very important. Bob was very impressed with all the melodies that were coming out. My process basically is, Bob would send me ideas, musical ideas. I would sit down and start writing melodies, of course, and then the lyrics would come in. Sometimes the music would hit me in a reverse way, and I would end up writing lyrics first and then hitting the melody. That's my process. I don't go in saying, okay, I'm going to do it like this. I listen to the material and I see what the material is saying to me. If I hear a melody in my head, I'm going to hit the record button and I'm just going to the melody that I have in my head. If I hear the material and right away, because of the feel I get from the music I'm hearing, I have lyrics stirring up in my brain about a certain concept, because prog music always has a concept behind it. It's never about nothing, and it's always about everything. So there would be certain, brainstorming going on in my mind about, what I'm hearing, and I got to put it down on paper. So I'll grab a pen and paper and start writing lyrics on it, and then come in with the melody. That's my process. It's never a song until I put the melody and lyrics to it, and then I go into the studio and Bob and I will fine tune it. That's when it becomes a Vass Katsionis song. It's always musical ideas and vocal melodies until we mash it up together in the studio. Usually, there are not too many differences made in the studio. We kind of polish it up between each other, through MP3s, of course, back and forth. And then when I make it to the studio to hit the vocals, there's just some fine tuning going on right there. That's our process, basically. He would send me music. I would send it back with lyrics and vocals and melodies, and then he would bring it back with some other ideas, because I would sing on a part that he didn't expect to be sung on, and then we'll change a bit. We'll bring the chorus to the bridge, and then we'll erase the first verse, and then we'll bring it back, and that sort of thing would happen. The songwriting process, like I said, that's what we would do. And then when we would finalize it, he would say, "Okay, you're ready. Come in and let's do the vocal recordings on it." He would have already made the adjustments and the changes in the music in the studio. So he had everything, like I said, super professional. Everything was ready. Hit the button, go. So when I'm vocally we would come out with 2 to 3 songs in one night, in one session. So because we had everything just in the margin that they're supposed to be in. There's really no discussion. It's just like, can we tweak this or tweak that? That's it. It was we would go into the studio and we would record the music.
Okay, so I guess because I have heard you kind of say that Bob sends you kind of, I guess, songs, instrumental songs.
Right, bodies of music, right? Instrumental. They're not songs. They're bodies of music. You
Okay.
know what I'm saying? And they just keep going on and on and on. And I would have some ideas, personally, and take parts in my program and cut and paste this way and that way. I'll take something that he had as a chorus and bring it in and make it a verse or an intro, and we would have this kind of process going on.
2 albums so far, Ethical Dilemma and Cynical Silence. So,
Right.
Ethical Dilemma, you've got Talis Kafkas on bass and Bill Di Benedetto on drums.
My old drummer from the States.
Uh-huh. Okay. I wasn't aware of that.
I heard. Yeah. He's a great drummer, as you can hear from the album. And the music that we came out with, Bob was like, okay, so who's the drummer? I was like, right away, it's got to be Bill Di Benedetto. Great drummer. This music fits him like a glove. And as you can hear, the outcome is perfect, what he did to the album.
Yeah, and on the second album, Bob is playing bass and Ross Lagos on drums. So
Ross Lagos is from the last, actually not the last lineup, the one before the last lineup from Terra Incognita. He's from the third or the fourth reprisal of Terra Incognita. I had so many musicians coming in and out of the band, but he was in one of the lineups.
I was wondering kind of what made you go with those musicians for those albums and kind of what they brought to the music.
Okay, well, Kafkas Tellis is a good friend of mine and of Bob's. We've worked together and separately with him before. He's a session bassist. He's a session musician. And we said that for the first album, we wanted it to come out perfect. And we had to be very careful to choose the musicians that were going to play on it. So right away, the first choice for bass was Telly because he's a professional. It's that simple. He's a sessionist. He knows exactly what needs to be done, where it needs to be done, without talking about it too much. To be quite honest with you, he came in, he blew out all the songs right away. He was he did his homework. He learned every song, and he played. Of course, we gave him the green light to play his own fills and things, but he came in very, very prepared, got it done. It was much more difficult with the drums from the States coming in from Bill Di Benedetto, and that took a long time to try and bring the drum tracks up to par for Bob to be able to put them on the album. That took like 2 months' time. It took a lot of time because he recorded it in a studio that didn't sound that great, and Bob, did his magic to get the drums to sound as perfect as possible. So that's basically how the first album came out. And then the second album, Bob said, you know what? This is much more aggressive music. Telly is more like a session player. He's more for like songs like From Ethical Dilemma. Cynical Silence has much more aggressive, much more powerful, hard-hitting songs. I'm going to do the bass. That's what Bob said. I'm going to hit the bass, and I'm going to play with a pick so that we can get that pick sound in the bass. He had this whole thing about the bass sound for this album. So that's why he decided to play bass on the album. And the nightmare of going back and forth with the drums from the States, he's like, let's try to pick a local drummer now so we can have, easier access to him and save some time. So Ross has his own studio here. He hit the drums for this album. Much easier for Bob to clarify everything on the drums. It took half the time. So that's how the musicians were picked for the two albums.
Fair enough. By the way, the Terra Incognita album, Fragments of a Ruined Mind, doesn't seem to be readily available anywhere to listen to. Is there a
I was forced to pull back any merchandise from that era of Terra Incognita because I'm not going to say I have legal battles, but I don't want to get to legal battles with the rest of the band members that were part of that album and part of that merchandise. We kind of agreed that no one was going to make any money off of that era of Terra Incognita. It was a verbal agreement with the rest of the band, and I'm trying to honor it. But I do have a lot of people asking me for the the Fragments of a Ruined Mind T-shirts and album and CD. It's just that with the band, it was verbally agreed on that no one was going to try to sell this merchandise and make money off of it without everybody agreeing to it. Let's just put it that way.
From what I understand, Fragments of a Ruined Mind was essentially a concept album, and the Vass Katsionis albums are kind of sort of the same thing. So I was wondering where your love of the kind of concept album kind of comes from.
Okay, well, growing up with my brother, the hippie, 70s, right? Pink Floyd, The Wall, Dark Side of the Moon, Rush, a whole bunch of Rush albums lying around. I'm picturing, Rush's album cover, moving pictures right now, and just blowing my mind. Just the album cover. And then I would open it up and put it on the record player, and bliss, just complete bliss. Everything that I was listening to back then was a concept album. I mean, even The Police, Synchronicity. In 1983, when that album came out, it was a concept album, whether people realize it or not. I mean, I was able to pick out the vague concepts from every album. I just had that talent, I guess you could say. And like I said, growing up with that music, that's what happened. So it was embedded in me that when I'm going to write lyrics, I'm going to make one song connect to the other somehow, in some way. It's going to be a concept. Fragments of a Ruined Mind is very surface. It's a very surface concept. It's a book. Strad, it's a book. It's a book about a vampire. So that's very easy to write about one song to another, right? Ethical Dilemma is exactly that. Every song has an ethical dilemma hidden in it, whether it's hidden deep down inside or whether it's surface. That's up to you to decide. And then Cynical Silence comes out, and it's just about I believe that we're going headstrong, head first into like World War III, whether it's with bombs or not, or whether it's with a push of a button and just destroying the economy of any third world country, which is what's happening. And everybody is in this bubble of cynical silence. There's this cynical silence about everything wrong in the world. Nobody's talking about it. Nobody's rebelling. Nobody is up for revolution. It's just, Queensryche revolution calling 30 years ago. Today we have a cynical silence. The opposite of the revolution calling is the cynical silence that everyone right now, the whole world, is covered in. Those are the concepts, Chris.
On the topic of lyrics, let me kind of pick out some of them from the Vass Katsionis album. So the ones that kind of stood out to me are, instead of letting your feelings shine, you give it cynical silence. There's also, Can I Have a Day Without Loss? Give me a day without loss. Another one that stood out was, So Many Ways to Live a Life. Is this all a big mistake? So some of these lyrics kind of seem very personal. So I was wondering, does it ever cross your mind to kind of go, am I revealing too much? How deep should I go?
Right. That is the dilemma. That's the ethical dilemma of every songwriter who writes about certain concepts. Ethical dilemma is exactly that. It has to do with finding your inner self, right? Revealing your inner self. When you do this, during this process, there's absolutely going to be many ethical dilemmas, because when you actually look at yourself in the mirror and you really, really, truly see who you are, there are going to be many dilemmas there, and they're going to be ethical too. So that takes care of that. And like I said, cynical silence has a lot to do with what's going on in the world today, about lives being, there's so many ways to live a life, right? Which is what you quoted. It has to do with that. You're going to live a life of silence, or you're going to revolt. Are you going to go against this whole new world order that's happening? I mean, we're zombies, man. We're fucking zombies, and they won. They did it. They got us to be sheep in a herd. And just once it's The Wall all over again, man. It's Pink Floyd's The Wall all over again. He was talking about a schoolyard in an English school back then in the 60s and 70s. We're talking about the whole world, man. The whole world is going into that meat grinder from the wall. The whole world, man. You know what I'm saying? It's the wall all over again, like 60 years later, man. A Day Without Loss is a very, 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 very personal song. It was written about the death of my sister. So that is plainly and bluntly that song. All the lyrics in that song have to do with the death of my sister. So that's pretty obvious. But the rest of the lyrics, like you said, you're either going to dig real deep down inside, or you're just going to kind of like surface over it. For me personally, when I write these lyrics, I don't think about how the listener is going to conceive them. I'm writing at that moment what I'm feeling, and I'm hoping I'm projecting that to the listener, so that not to tell him what to think or not to tell him what to feel, but to get him to think and to feel differently than what he's used to feeling and thinking. That's my concept of concept lyrics for me.
We've touched on AI and computers and that kind of thing. The cover for the latest album was created with the assistance of AI, Cynical Silence being the album that we're talking about. And yet there's a huge debate going on at the moment these days when it comes to AI. Do you want to give a short opinion on that? Because I'm sure we can talk about it for ages.
No, I'm not going to go into that, Chris. It's just a double-edged dagger. That's how I see it. Double-edged dagger. You asked me about an hour ago the most crucial question. What's the good and the bad, the positive and the negative of back then with how things turn out in music today. It's the same concept. It's the same argument. It's the same conversation. It's a double-edged dagger. Like all good things, too much is too much. If you go overboard with the whole AI thing, visually, musically, lyrically, for me, it's going overboard. It's exceeding to a point where it's losing the face. Of course, like I said before, it's all faceless. Not just the face, but the whole feel and the soul of every piece of music that you write. If it has from the beginning, the middle, and the end is all constructed by AI. Where's the human aspect? I'm like, why do I go back to listen to 70s music, whether it's R&B, whether it's soul, whether it's pop music from back then? Because the instruments are real. What I know that in my mind, what I'm hearing right now is a person strumming that guitar. It's a person hitting that snare. I mean, I was listening to Bill Weathers' album a couple of days ago, and you can actually feel the drummer tapping on the hi-hat and the snare and the boot at the same time. And without me realizing it, I had crunched over like I just did not. And I was doing the drums. Because I was listening to Bill Weathers. I was flipping out, and I'm like, where is that today? Today, you know that what you're hearing is a push of a button. No music today, Chris. It's been 10 years for me to hear something from modern day music, no matter what the genre is, that's going to make me want to play air guitar to it. That's going to make me want to headbang to it. That's going to make me want to do the air drums to it, because there's no feel to it, Chris. I don't feel it. And then you say, why do you go back and listen to Sade or Hall & Oates or Otis Redding? That's why. Because I'm listening to real music. Of course, I lean much, much, much more towards AI is doing damage to the music industry. But I've been a part of the machine. I've been a part of the monster myself, working with Bob. Because like I said, his studio is state of the art. It's all digital. All digital. Not much analogical going on there. So, like I said, it's lost it. I think it's lost its feel. It's lost its soul. It's lost its face with the whole AI. And it's so funny because I'm so old school that when of course, hearing it is so easy. It's so easy to just to realize how fake it is, right? How AI it is. Even the lyrics. I'm so old school. I'm so pen and paper about lyrics that I hear AI lyrics and I cringe. I'm like, and it says lyrics by this guy's name, the singer's name, or the bassist's name, or something. That's bullshit. You can tell that it was AI. You can tell it was a fucking computer that came out with that line right there, or that paraphrase right there, or that chorus right there. That's bullshit. I mean, when you're old school and it's rooted in you, and you grew up with the music that I grew up with, and the sounds that I grew up with, you know what's human and what's subhuman and what's non-human. You can tell. You can tell, Chris.
So I guess you're not going to be using it anytime soon for writing lyrics or writing music.
Absolutely not. I will keep away from it as much as possible. I will never touch anything AI. One of the biggest arguments that Bob and I had, and this is a bit of a gossip tidbit, was about the album cover.
Yeah.
We went back and forth for a month because we were fighting about the album. He's like, AI. I'm like, no. First album was a painting. I want a painting on the second album. I want to keep the concept of a hand with a brush that has made what we made as music into an image. He's like, nope, we're doing AI. So I lost that argument, as you can tell. But like I said, I ended up at some parts becoming part of the machine, part of the monster. Not proud of that, but like I said, we're in the 21st century. Got to move forward. I'll keep it as analogical as possible personally. You know what I mean? And and like I said, at some points you just got to put, like we say here in Greece, you got to put some water in your wine. It's a saying. You got to put some water in your wine so you can come to a compromise. It's all about compromising.
Understand. Terra Incognita, they toured quite extensively. And yes, you've said for the Vass Katsionis collaboration, at the moment it's just a studio project. Bob's very busy. You've mentioned the right offer would have to come along, which is completely understandable. But I guess, how much of a desire do you still have to go out there and perform live? And does that want still exist within you?
Great question, Chris. Thank you for that question. Actually, the live sensation was missing from my life after I took a 2-year hiatus. That I'm in 2 bands right now that are playing live. I'm in 2 bands. I'm in a Greek cover band, a Greek Led Zeppelin cover band. We play only Led Zeppelin songs, and we booked some dates. And I've just become the official lead singer of the legendary neoclassical heavy metal band from Greece, Angelos Perlepes' Mystery.
Mystery.
Angelo Perlepes Mystery.
Okay.
It's got to be the whole thing, because if you just put plain Mystery, that it's going to come out. I think there's a heavy metal Canadian band named Mystery, so you got to put his name. It's the guitarist's name, Angelo Perlepes Mystery.
You have to send me a link.
I've just been recruited as the singer of that band, and we're already playing in 2 weeks. We're going to open up for Rage.
Nice.
And in a couple of months, we're opening up for Riot. So I'm very busy live-wise, very busy with these 2 bands. Obviously, it was missing from my life. I'm a live singer. I always have been, always will be. Everybody that's heard my albums with my live performances blow away my studio performances. Everybody tells me that, which makes me believe I'm a live singer. I'm better live than I am in the studio. So the Vass Katsionis project is very sensitive. To capture that level of musicianship that are on these 2 albums, gotta be Bob. Bob has to be a part of the band, is what I'm saying. If he ever jumps on board for a live performance of this material, the rest is easy. The hardest part is getting him on board to do something live with this music. Very difficult because he has the studio and the production company. To be quite honest, here locally, it's things are quite difficult for any band to play live. It's an uphill battle. Let's just put it that way. It's not easy, and it's not it doesn't give you the clubs around here and the fans, let's say, really don't give you the drive and the thrust to want to actually take the extra step to make the impossible possible. Let's put it that way. It's different for a cover band. Very easy. The material is there. You learn it. You go out and you play it. Angelo Bellapes's Mystery. The band has like 5 albums out. They've been out since the 80s. Legendary band. Everything there is set, ready to go. Live set. This is what we're going to do. Everything is set. The Vass Katsionis is going to have to start from zero, from a big zero. And that is the most difficult part. And that is where you weigh up and down and you say, is it really worth it? Is it really worth it? It is for us, of course. And it is for the fans who bought the albums. But like I said, the local live scene here is an uphill battle. I'm just going to put it that way so that I don't offend anybody. But it's an uphill battle. It's very difficult. It doesn't help you want, like I said before, to make the impossible possible.
I get it. So what's the most difficult Led Zeppelin song to sing?
You know what? We just put into the set list Since I've Been Loving You.
Great song, love it.
And other people would say, I don't know, I guess the Immigrant Song or Stairway, or we do a communication breakdown, which is very, very difficult for vocals because it's very high pitched and all that. But to get the feel and the soul of the bluesiness of Since I've Been Loving You, which of course will never be played a second time the same way it was played the first, or sung a second time the same way it was sung. In other words, we've jammed on it and practiced it, rehearsed it about 5 times. We recorded all 5 times. All 5 times were played differently, sung differently. It's just the power of the blues. You know what I'm saying? That's just that kind of song. At that moment, it's what you feel, playing-wise, instrument-wise, and singing and vocally. So for me, it's most difficult because trying to get into that groove, into that blues feel, and just taking my mind away from everything that's happening around me and trying to get into the lyrics, what Plant is trying to say at that moment. And like I said, it never comes out the same way a second time. Never. For me, that's pretty difficult because of the rest of the songs, we got them down in the square, We squared off all the songs. We're playing all the great classics. We're playing Dire Maker, Trampled Underfoot, like I said, Communication Breakdown. We're combining, which Zeppelin never did themselves, the way it's played on the record, Heartbreaker with Live and Love and Me. Just like the record. Goes straight in, right? One song goes straight into the other. That's a treat for the live folk that will come out to check us out. We got little tidbits like that. Stairway to Heaven, my guitarist, he's going to pull out a flute, and he's going to play the flute the way you hear it on the record. It's not going to be keyboards. It's not going to be sampled. You're going to see him on stage with a flute hitting the intro, the same way you hear it on the record. I mean, we got some nice little, tidbits going on like that. It's a great show. It's a great show. And the Angelo Bellapes Mystery, that's neoclassical heavy metal. Like I said, many albums, many fans, well known. It's a laid out gig, Chris. It's a laid out gig. I do nothing but learn the songs and sing them. That's all I have to do in this band. Everything else is laid out. That's what I'm doing currently right now. And of course, in the near future, getting together for the 3rd Vass Katsionis album with Bob.
Yes, talk to us. 3rd Vass Katsionis album. What does the future hold?
Yeah, try to get Bob to sit down. I need to not write music on this, to talk about this. That's how difficult it is. He's always trying to, to find time. But he's, like I said, he's super busy with the 2 studios, the production company and the studio, the music studio. But you know what? The way Bob and I work, I'm positive that some morning I'm going to wake up and I'm going to find 4 brand new MP3s. The email's going to write Bob Katsionis, Vass Katsionis, 3rd album. And that's how it's going to begin. That's simple. It's just going to happen. Spur of the moment. He's going to get the urge to sit down and write progressive metal music the way Vass Katsionis only can do it. And he's going to sit down and write bodies of music, and he's going to send them to me. And one day I'm just going to open up my email. I'm going to say, okay, here we go. We begin. That's how it's going to happen, Chris. That's the only way it's going to happen with Bob. That's the only time he has. It's going to be 4 a.m. He's going to grab his guitar. He's going to hit play on the playback button, and the drums are going to roll, and he's just going to start jamming and wailing and doing all sorts of progressive stuff, and he's going to record it, and he's going to send it to me. He's going to be like, and the email's just going to write, Vass Katsionis, album number 3. That's it, and then we're off. We're off to the races.
Very nice. Final question. Okay, post the breakup of Terra Incognita, you and prior to the Vass Katsionis stuff happening, you collaborated with Kostas Varas and a band by the name of Rhodium, from what I could see. So
That's
how did
right.
these collaborations come about? Any more collaborations planned in the future?
Both of those gigs were strictly session paid gigs. Strictly session paid gigs. I was hired for Rhodium to write to lay down the lyrics. Actually, some lyrics they needed correction because their English wasn't up to par. So I had to correct a lot of lyrics. But they wanted my voice. They got my voice. They paid for my voice. That was that with Rhodium. And the same thing with Kostas Varas. He's a neoclassical soloist, and he had some songs and some ideas, and he needed my vocals. And again, paid gig. I'm also a session singer, as you can tell, Chris. Anyone that needs the kind of vocals that I produce, those situations were exactly that. After that, like post Terra Incognita breakup and pre Vass Katsionis, I did that, exactly what you said, those two paid gigs, and I went on that 2-year hiatus that I was talking about before. Just stopped everything. I stopped recording, I stopped writing, I stopped listening. I just dropped down the rollers. Nothing was moving. I wanted to zero out. I wanted to get back to my roots, to be quite honest with you. And that's when I started breaking out the vinyls again and all the old school stuff, 60s and 70s, all kinds of genres. I just wanted to empty out my brain from everything that was happening and everything that had happened till then, and just get back to my roots. And that is a big, big part of me joining the Led Zeppelin tribute band, the Led Zeppelin cover band. I wanted to get back to my roots. My roots are Zeppelin and everything around that era. And Mystery, the Angelo Pedalopes Mystery gig, is completely 70s. That's back to roots also. That's stripped down roots right there. Even though it's a neoclassical metal, again, when you hear it, it's Fender Stratocaster in your face, you know, with gritty vocals. It's I just wanted to get back to my roots, and that's what I did. I took a 2-year hiatus. When I came back, I was searching for something specific, which is what I got with these two bands, getting back to my roots.
Very nice. Well, thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it. Just any final words, anything you want to throw out there?
I want to say thank you, Chris, for taking the time and supporting the Vass Katsionis project. Honestly, I'm very proud of this body of work. Very proud of it, and of course, it's going to continue. We need to keep the music that we listen to alive. We need to keep live bands playing live. We need to keep studio bands going into the studio writing albums. We have to support them. We got to support the musicians, the bands, the songwriters, because like I said, AI is here. AI is here, and I hate to say it, but it's definitely gonna do some headhunting. That's for sure.
Yeah, reach deep into your pocket, buy the albums, buy the T-shirts. If you like it,
get away from that whole. Exactly. Get away from that whole computer. Get off your computer. Get off your phone. Get off your tablet. Go to a club. Pay the damn ticket. Listen to a fucking live band playing live music in front of you, in your face, in your ears. Buy vinyl. Go back into the old school days. Check out what the pioneers were doing for the genres that you listen to today. It's a huge generation gap. Huge generation gap. But you don't know where you're going unless you know where you came from, man.